So Julia is the wife who lives at Northfield Hall. She arranged their family life at Northfield Hall. Samuel is her husband. They've been married for a long time, but they were separated for 11 years of that marriage because he was press ganged into the Navy and was fighting in the Napoleonic Wars. Now he's been back, they've expanded their family, and Julia has said, I want to go to Manchester because there's a really big speech and I want to be a part of this movement. And so this scene is the day before, actually, it's the morning that she leaves, and it's from Samuel's point of view, and we see how he's kind of processing the fact that
Mhm.
Julia is going off to Manchester. The morning Julia would leave him, Samuel woke before the babies. He broke free from a nightmare, the usual one about being trapped beneath a cannon while the ship caught fire and sank faster and faster into the cold Mediterranean Sea. Sometimes his fearful moans woke Julia, but this morning she snored on beside him, her lips curled in something that resembled a smile. She was looking forward to her time away. He didn't know what to make of their tryst the previous evening. Ordinarily, that was the type of thing he tried not to think too hard about. If his wife wanted to make love to him, then who was he to second guess it? But Samuel wished it had felt more like lovemaking and less like a tourniquet on the wound bleeding between them. Julia had not stopped to listen to his concerns. And had he given her a fair shot? Samuel now couldn't remember what they had discussed. His only memory from the conversation was of the emotions that had swept over him, and which hovered somewhere in the same corner of his soul as that blasted nightmare. Whatever they had said last night, Julia was still leaving in a matter of hours, even though he wished it weren't so. Samuel had to resign himself to fate. Well, he had done that plenty of times throughout his life, and this time it was temporary. Julia was leaving for a fortnight. Surely he could handle that far better than when he had truly awoken in a nightmare on HMS Scipion and discovered he would spend the rest of his life without a left calf. He started the long process of easing out of bed. The first step was to find his peg. In the dark, he groped along the wall where it was supposed to be. Nothing. He bent farther, bracing himself against the mattress, and felt around on the floor. Finally, when he had almost fallen off the bed, he found it nestled against the baseboard of the wall an arm's reach away, where it had apparently rolled overnight. Fine. Even with Julia in bed beside him, he didn't need her help to get his unruly peg in order. Now sitting up, he reached into the little wooden chest beside the bed that held his leather strap and salve. The strap kept his peg leg in place all day. The salve kept the strap from rubbing his thigh raw. Ordinarily, he looked at these little instruments of his day and felt nothing. This morning, rage bubbled up. Old rage. Rage that had been born the day the press gang punched him to the ground in Liverpool, before marching him to Old Glory. What had Samuel done to earn that? Why had he been born to lose his liberty, lose his leg, lose his life as he knew it, when other men were born to eat roast beef every day off golden plates? Why was his wife abandoning him for a bigger dream when all the other wives of Northfield Hall were remaining with their husbands? A stupid, selfish, petty rage to give in to. Samuel threw down the strap in disgust. He knew better than to let such emotions breathe. He would not turn into one of those bitter old men who had nothing to do except rail against every unfair turn of life. He had a family of adorable children. He had a wife who was smarter than anyone he knew, who had once seen him across a church service and deemed him worthy, and who would come back to him after she finished her mission in Manchester. Startling back to reality, he discovered Julia was awake and curling her warm body around the curve of his back. "Do you need help?" Her voice was tender and raw from sleep. Samuel hadn't meant to wake her up, and if she had to awaken, he wished it wasn't now, when he was least like the man she had married. "No," he said, trying to push her away. "Go back to sleep." Julia draped her legs around either side of him from behind and took the pot of salve from his hand. "Let me." She was so warm at his back. Even though the day would be hot, the bedroom was cool, and his wife's body comforted him. The rage subsided, like a wave retreating from the beach. He watched Julia's fingers dip into the salve. She warmed it between her two palms before bringing her hands to his leg. Leaning around him now, still with her legs spread around his back, she soothed the salve into his bare thigh with gentle, practiced strokes. She eased the lotion onto his stump, too, and lingered there, caressing it with all the love in the world. Samuel had been so ashamed for her to see it when he first came to Northfield Hall. For a whole year he had refused to disrobe in front of her, much less let her see him minister to his leg. Even now, the rage inside him hated that she was touching it. But Samuel had learned not to listen to it. He had resigned himself to this fate, which meant he could welcome his wife's touch. "Do you promise you'll take good care of this old thing while I'm gone?" Julia asked. Her cheek rested lazily against his shoulder, and the movement of her lips rustled his nightshirt. "I won't fall apart without you." "Good." Her fingers, no longer slick with salve, wandered faster now, away from his injury and up towards his groin. "What about this old thing? Will you take care of it, too, while I'm gone?" But Samuel caught her wrist before she reached his Roger. He didn't want that, not right now. If they were going to be awake together, he wanted to actually say something, not erase all hope of words with another confusing roll on the mattress. "I want to give you something, Jules." Her eyes, dark in the dawning light, widened with surprise. "You don't need to be spending any money on me." "I didn't." Not releasing her wrist, Samuel reached under his pillow with his other hand and retrieved his locket. He tucked it into her palm. "I want you to have this." Julia's fingers tightened around it before she could even look at it. "But it's yours." Samuel had done his best to clean it up. He had polished the brass and put some oil on the tiny hinges. But from looking at it, a person could see the difficult life it had led. Its cover was scratched, tarnished, and a little dented. Inside, the miniature oil painting had suffered a water stain from the 1811 hurricane that soaked Samuel's entire sea chest. To Samuel's eyes, it was still beautiful. "For all those years, this was the sum total of what I had of you. A tiny little painting, done by an artist who never met you, made from the description I gave her." Samuel had been on shore leave in Cadiz, hadn't seen so much as the English Channel for 4 years, and the miniature artist had been rushing through paintings to service all the homesick sailors. "What does your wife look like?" the artist had asked in stilted English. Samuel had pictured Julia's face as if she were right there before him, smiling, eager, vigorous. But how did he put that into words? How did he make the painter catch the correct angle of her nose, which was neither straight nor crooked? How did he explain the exact distance between her eyes, and how her irises were such a flecked brown that they were almost honey? How did he describe the soft sweep of her lips, and the way they were always one joke away from an easy smile? "It's not a perfect portrait of you," he said to Julia with a chuckle. The woman in the locket had jet black hair instead of the light mud color of Julia's, and she didn't smile at all as she stared out of the locket, her lips instead a firm pink line. But her eyes, how they shone, even though they were composed of the tiniest dots of oil paint. Her hair, though too dark, sprang in magical curls across the small canvas, just as it did in real life. And most of all, the artist had somehow managed to capture Julia's essence in her posture, full of hope, full of plans, full of an unwillingness to let life dictate its terms to her, as if the portrait of Julia was running off to find Samuel in real life. "If a stranger had only this likeness to go off, they might not find you," Samuel continued, "especially now that my hair is mostly gray." He reached out and threaded his fingers through the mess of hair that had escaped from beneath her nightcap. Then he pointed to the locket. "Do you know how I described you to the artist? What made her paint you like this?" Julia's lips twitched, stubborn and willful. "A woman who shapes the world around her, who doesn't let fate sweep her one way or another, who is so intelligent that when she doesn't know something, she knows the questions to ask to find it out. And—" he paused, remembering how the miniaturist had stared at him, trying to make sense of his descriptions. A woman whom I love more deeply than I ever thought possible. Julia wrapped her fingers around his. They were smooth from the salve, warm and strong. Why are you giving this to me? I want you to take it with you. I want you to remember. He cleared his throat. This type of talk was difficult, awkward, and his instincts surged forward to try to steer him away from speaking his heart so clearly. He stayed the course. That I love you. This version of you, as well as the version of you that is my wife and the mother of my children. I wish that you weren't called to join this fight, but I love that you always do what is right. He waited, watching her examine the locket again, memorizing the curve of her lips as she smiled down at his token. He hoped she might say something in return about how much she loved him. Perhaps she would even promise him that nothing would ever come between them. She said no such words, but it was enough for him that she took the locket and that on this last morning they had together, she kissed him on the lips and whispered she would never forget.
Beautiful.
Thank you.